Suppose I say no to God. Should God honor my choice or not? Or should he reverse it? You see, the whole point about love and relationship is the ability to say yes or no. And therefore, if someone examines the claims of Christ, and as they did in his day, they watched him restore people to sanity, and they saw evidence of God at work, and they said, go away. That's what he did. He went away. Now, that going away, if God goes away in the big scale, if I ultimately say, God, get out of my universe, what that leaves me with is, of course, well, unimaginable. I think it's what the Bible means by hell. It's very real. But it's the consequence of people having their own choice. It pains God, but God will honor your choice. Otherwise, God would be a despot, trampling over your choice. And it seems to me this is one of the most impressive things about Christianity, actually. That God doesn't blast in with huge Star Wars-like power and laser guns and all the rest of it. He comes in such a simple fashion that humble people can invite him in for a glass of wine or a cup of tea or whatever it was in those days and get to know him and make up their mind. So that's one part of the question. The other part was people growing up and so on. Well, here now it's a matter of evidence. And some people have a very curious view of God, which also lies behind the question. Will God condemn a person for not responding to evidence they've never had? Of course not. How could you possibly believe in a God who was fundamentally immoral? God judges people on the basis of evidence they've had, not on evidence they haven't had. You see that all through the Bible. I expect, one day to meet Abraham. We're going to have a very interesting conversation because I don't understand all that he did in his life, and I'm going to ask him a few things. But Abraham believed God, and it was counted to him for righteousness. He knew almost nothing of Christ, and nothing at all about Jesus. That is, he believed at the level the evidence was presented to him. Now, there's evidence according to Scripture, not only in Scripture, but in creation, that people can respond. And it's very interesting reading the history of Christian missions, how sometimes people have stumbled on a tribe and they're just in responding to nature, monotheistic, and believing there is a God there. There is evidence around. But I believe with all my heart that God doesn't condemn people for not responding to evidence they haven't had. In fact, Jesus said so. He once healed a blind man. And the professors of theology were very interested in this. They didn't believe he'd healed a blind man. The blind man thought it was absurd because he knew whether he'd been healed or not. And there was a marvelous, almost hilarious conversation between Jesus and these professors of theology. And then they began to twig that the healing of the blindness had a deeper message. And they said to him, are we also blind? And he said this, if you were blind, you would have no sin. But now you say you see, your sin remains. In other words, if a person is blind, if they can't see, then God will not condemn them for not seeing what they cannot see. So it seems to me that and there's a question that always comes on top of that, and I might as well say something about it because I'll be besieged and shot at afterwards if I don't mention it. People say, well then why bother to do mission? Why bother to propagate the gospel? Well, because Christ commanded it, that's why. I don't propagate Christianity because I've solved a complex problem and how much evidence you have had or have not had. As I look at you, it's very interesting. We're a Western audience. This is a country where many people go to church. But some in the audience may know less about Christianity than folks in Papua New Guinea that you mentioned. So I try to present the evidence to increase the light that people have to respond to.